From an adaptation perspective, episode 5 of The Last of Us Season 2 doesn't get much better outside of the ending. The tone of the game and the show are so misaligned to the point that it makes the show come across as less compelling and not as emotionally effective. So much of the narrative emphasis is on Dina and Ellie's romance, taking away and suppressing the longing for revenge and the bleakness that should be permeating from that story. The confrontation I was hoping was going to course correct the season happens this episode, where Ellie addresses the danger of Dina's pregnancy, but it's a complete polar opposite to the game, in which Ellie is willing to drop this entire pursuit to take Dina back to Jackson. This to me represents a narrative breaking point in terms of adapting the game's story. Ellie is admitting that her love for Dina and wanting to start a family is overriding her lust for revenge. The fact that Dina is the one to convince Ellie to stay on this path via sharing her backstory is wild. Revenge should be blinding Ellie this season. By this point in the story, we should be seeing the toll this journey is taking on her inner character. Revenge slowly chips away at you and forces you to make sacrifices to realize your goal, which is the whole point of Dina's pregnancy, because it forces a choice on Ellie of either selfishly pursuing Abby or taking care of Dina. It acts as a major consequence if Ellie chooses Abby. She's neglecting love for hate and accentuates that vengeance has a cost. The ending of Seattle Day 2 for the game was like an exclamation mark to a long run-on sentence of violence. In the show, it feels like we're at the first word of the same sentence. Nora's death is really our first exposure to Ellie slipping down this dark path. However, for the game, Ellie has already realized her bloodlust by killing other members of this group back in Day 1. The show opts to cut all of this and replaces it primarily with Dina and Ellie bonding, shifting that narrative and tonal focus away from what made the game so overwhelmingly crushing and oppressive. Episode 5 of the show finally sees Ellie killing a member of the crew she's after, but it feels like it's too little too late. Especially since we only have 2 remaining episodes, and it seems like the next episode will be a flashback episode. So in reality, we have 1 remaining episode within the Seattle journey. This is where I think the show should have followed the plot of the game more closely. Ellie needs to be mad at Dina's pregnancy so that when she goes into the theater and finds that guitar, she falls back on a warm moment of connection with a memory of Joel. This is how episode 4 should have ended, so that episode 5 could have been the flashback episode. The way it is currently, where they're putting the flashback after the death of Nora, feels really jarring, and I feel we're going to lose a lot of that momentum and adrenaline going into the finale. Before going into some pacing problems with the season, let's take a minute to talk about today's sponsor, Private Internet Access, one of the best VPN services on the market. To briefly describe a VPN, they hide your IP address, safeguard you from hackers, and guards your personal data, and to me, my favorite aspect is changing the location of your device. This video review is on The Last of Us, and to watch this show, you have to have Max. Surprisingly, Max isn't available in every country, and the UK, as an example, needs a VPN to access the streaming service. With this aspect and the threat of hackers becoming more prevalent, it all but makes having a VPN a necessity these days, especially if you're someone who comes across your content in untraditional means. Private Internet Access is available on all platforms, so I feel offering a generous discount of 83% off for 2 years and 4 months is a great deal for you, and the link piavpn.com/supercutsdelight is in the description. If you're also not sure about trying the VPN, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you want to support this channel, then consider trying out Private Internet Access. Going back to the point that we have 1 more episode in Seattle, it feels like this journey is very rushed and is too short. It seems like most of the story is going to be taking place not in Seattle for this season, which is also another stark contrast to the game. I was initially under the impression going into the season that because this was going to be a 7-episode season, some episodes would be feature length or considerably over the hour mark, particularly the Seattle days, because there's a lot of material to cover that happens within each day in the game. But so far, each episode has been a standard length, and the shortest episode of the season is episode 5. while the Jackson episodes have been longer than the Seattle days. In terms of pace though, I felt this especially for this recent episode and how quickly it moves. The moment that encapsulates this the most was after Ellie escapes the scars, she spots the hospital far away in the distance, but then in the next scene, she's now just there. This also invalidates the absolute struggle the characters went through to get to this location. The fact that Ellie is so easily able to get through the security line, find a very convenient exterior hole in the building that leads into the hospital, and then sneaks into and hides in a random supply closet until her target walks into that room, was just a baffling sequence of events. Like, I get that Ellie won't be killing all of these people like what transpires in the game, because that would be unrealistic, but the writers are essentially handing Ellie the cleanest and most convenient solution to this massive hurdle of an obstacle. This is a moment where you can prove that Ellie is more than a bumbling and reckless idiot. A major change, by the way, that is made from the game. Which, going into that, this is a change that's been annoying me all season. Now, I understand that Ellie is a reckless character and this entire journey essentially represents that, but the show goes as far to make Ellie seem overtly dumb or just doesn't think anything through, completely downplaying her intellect and making her seem even more like a child.
And is that all guns, or do you have medical supplies in there? No?
Oh, you think that no matter what happens, I'm just gonna start firing?
Literally every single time, yes. Don't get angry.
There's this quote from the first Inside the episode that describes this character dynamic between Ellie and Dina that immediately put me off a bit, and I was hoping it wouldn't develop much further.
She sort of has all of the qualities that Ellie doesn't. Dina's very logical and very type A.
Ellie's the brawn and Dina's the brains.
I feel the statement and general writing approach for this character dynamic is fundamentally flawed. Why do they have to dumb down Ellie's character? It doesn't really serve much of a purpose narratively in terms of what it contributes to their relationship. Why can't they equally or somewhat be on a level field in terms of intelligence? If anything, this gives more of the character agency to Dina because she's always coming up with the plans and being the one to make the decisions. Or she flat out tells Ellie, no, that's stupid, and then they do what Dina proposes. It oddly feels like Dina is more of the person driven by revenge, while Ellie has kind of become entranced by Dina's lovely aura. Which, I mean, fair, but again, this distracts away from what the narrative should be focusing on, while also deteriorating Ellie's character into seeming less mature. It just doesn't feel like Ellie is written with realism in that she should be applying some thought, strategy, or introspection into scenarios, instead of heedlessly running into every situation blind. There needs to be a balance between how a character is being reckless and how intelligent they are, something that I think is fumbled in the show. I know this review of episode 5 is primarily focusing on the flaws, but the stalker scene was at least really good, accentuating and escalating a sense of fright and hopelessness. I like especially that Dina kind of freezes in terms of formulating a plan, and Ellie finally steps in with some agency. Although, it's not the best plan in terms of just being human bait, but at least Ellie has that agency for a singular moment. It's also a little unfortunate here that Jesse showing up operates more as a deus ex machina in the show. I know it's described how he found their trail and he should find them at some point, but arriving right before they die is undoubtedly very convenient timing. If he showed up a minute later, they would have been reduced to mere appendages. It's a bit different in the game where Tommy precedes Dina and Ellie into Seattle. That was one of the big changes that wasn't necessarily a bad change, but something that was making the story play out differently. So the way Ellie and Jesse run into each other is following Tommy's trail of destruction. The way it is in the show isn't a massive problem to me, and will only act to annoy people who are already disliking how the show is being adapted. This then goes into the Scar set piece, which I was eagerly anticipating. As I said in my episode 3 review, I wish we didn't get that initial Scar introduction that explained to us who they were, and humanized them so early because it kind of undercuts the horror of this scene. If this was the introduction of the scars as it is in the game, then it's a much more terrifying moment because we don't know what's happening and who they are. Ellie suddenly gets sniped by an arrow and you're immediately induced with adrenaline and are in survival mode. It's one of my favorite set pieces from the game, and I was hoping the show would have something similar to this, and what we got was still good, but it seems like they're going to use that arrow to incapacitate Dina so that she physically can't continue on this journey to kill Abby. Which, for that aspect, I wish it wasn't a physical impairment and instead a disagreement between characters, and having a debate about the reckless nature of pursuing Abby, and the most likely eventuality where they'll probably die trying to realize this goal. Something that, for the show especially, acts as a character motivation contradiction in which, at a certain point, I feel they'd rather let this go and start a family together. Something they seem to be valuing way more than wanting to kill Abby. Then Ellie would finally get to be a dad.
I'm gonna be a dad.
I don't know, maybe that run-in with the stalkers will act as a wake-up call for Dina, and she'll try to convince Ellie to give up her pursuit in the finale, but who knows. I was hoping that conflict would arise in this episode when it didn't. At the very least for episode 5, some individual scenes have a good baseline quality, it's just most of my grievances are coming down to the stark differences in stories and how they're for the worse in the show. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments what your thoughts on the season are. My Letterboxd, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description, and thanks again to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video, and make sure to use the link in the description to get a massive 83% discount. For that specific deal, that's just $2.03 a month, and you get 4 months free. Thanks immensely to my top patrons, Logan Farmer and Simply Put.